Hey, welcome to Playing for Keeps, the show where we take a deep dive into dating, love, relationships, sex, and attachment theory. Your host, DJ, will be hosting Dating Chronicles, where she has guests come on the show and give a funny, crazy, or romantic dating story. Tune in if you need a laugh, hear something romantic, or maybe hear someone else's experience to help you grow in your relationship journey.
Hey everybody, it's your girl DJ with Playing for Keeps podcast, and today we have a special guest for Dating Chronicles, Skorpyen November. How are you today?
I'm well. Hey guys. DJ, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
No, thank you so much for coming on. It's so appreciated. So you are here for Dating Chronicles, but before we get into that, how was your holiday? You know, last week was Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
How was
that?
Good.
It was great. I'm responsible for the dressing every year, and my dressing is bomb. I even make a vegetarian dressing.
Really?
So yes, I do, and it is the bomb. It was good. I didn't get the itis though, which I'm so glad about. I didn't eat so much where I went into a food coma. Didn't get the itis, but I did eat my fair share, and it was, yeah. I had leftovers. I still have leftovers. Actually, I know some people probably threw theirs away. I didn't. I still have some.
Oh, wow. Okay. I know me. I'm not a big cook, so I didn't cook. What I normally do every year, I house hop. So I'll bring something to everybody's house.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll go to the store and buy something, so I'm justified for collecting my plates and eating their food. So, but this year I ate at home and I slept. Like I just slept. So it was good for me. I got a lot of rest. I didn't eat as much as I normally would do. I usually would tear it up. I'm collecting plates now, usually, but this year I couldn't do it. I just was tired and I caught up on rest. So I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, that was probably the best thing. Sometimes we push ourselves to do things that we really shouldn't be pushing ourselves to do if our body is telling us, it needs a break. Sometimes it's screaming at us that I need a break. And we're like, nah, you got it. You good.
Right. Right. No, my body was like laid down. So I think I ate maybe 2 plates Thanksgiving, and I just slept on and off that whole day. And I felt so much better, like, because I had to work literally the next day. So I needed that rest, and it worked out.
Yeah, that was the best thing. I'm sure your body is thanking you. Yes.
It is, because I'm normally trying to push it all the time.
Just a thing that American culture has taught us to do, to keep pushing, or especially if you have a goal or something in mind, to just keep pushing until you meet that goal. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to meet the goal if we take the break. Maybe it may take us a little longer, but sometimes that's just what we need, that mental, emotional, and physical break to just recalibrate, and then we can come back and go harder.
And agree. I totally agree. And like you just said, I do believe that is our culture that pushes that and has it like in our minds that if we do take a break, we probably will stay there. And like it's not the case for everybody.
True.
Very true. So you are here for Dating Chronicles. So on Dating Chronicles, you give a funny, crazy, or romantic dating story. What do you have for us today?
Well. I have a story of betrayal to tell. Yes.
Doom, doom, doom.
I know, right? We need that scary what is that, Law and Order?
Right.
like the original seasons of Law and Order. But yeah, I have a story of betrayal, and it involves a guy that I saw off and on for many years in college and beyond, and someone that I at one time considered a best friend, sister, even. We even referred to each other as sisters at some point. And yeah, and how that just totally broke my heart. The ending of the friendship probably um, broke my heart more than the ending of any communication or anything with the guy. And that
Oh.
was more so what I was mourning with him, is have mourned with him as well, is the end of the friendship. Um, Basically, I'll start from the beginning. My first year off at my first year of college, I went to community college. My second, and my friend, we graduated in the same class. She went to a 4-year university. And so I stayed home and I worked for 1 year. When she came home for the summer, we eventually worked at the same place over the summer. And then we went off to college together and we were roommates. We were so excited, so that we
Wow.
moved off campus without a car. What?
What?
We were nowhere near campus. We moved off campus without a car. Dumbest thing ever. But in my defense, I knew nothing about the city. I was just going by what she told me. And so we moved so far off the campus where it was not even feasible to walk to. But anyway, we eventually moved on campus, still as roommates. And one of my first college experiences was a step show. It was a Kappa step show, I'm thinking, in the theater on campus. And so I'm like, oh, I'm just saying, I never had a Greek experience, never been to a step show or anything. It was so many people in there. And I'm just looking, I'm having a great time. Then all of a sudden, towards the end of the step show, all I see is a whole bunch of guys in fatigues, purple shirts, and gold boots
Okay.
storm the stage. The Kappas are still on stage, but these guys come on the stage and just take over the stage and get to doing their hop and barking and everything. And I'm like, oh, what in the world? I just knew it was disrespectful. I was like, they're not supposed to do that. I know this is, even though I had never had a Greek experience, I knew it was disrespectful for them to do that. And then my eye just catches this big dude, all muscle, no shirt. I'm
Oof.
like, damn, who is that? I'm like, oh my gosh, mind you, at this time I'm about 19 years old or so. And I'm looking, I'm like, oh my gosh, he is fine. Who is that? I look over to my friend, I'm like, girl, who's that? She's like, I don't know. So I make it my business over the next 2 weeks to find out who he is and to make sure he gets my number. I found out who he is. I get his number. Well, he gets
Okay.
my number. He calls me. But at this particular point, we're still living off campus, me and my friend. And so I talked to him on the phone and I remember, and we tried to, I knew what he looked like, but he had no idea what I looked like. He had no idea who I was. And and so I can remember him asking me, what do I look like and all that stuff. And I was like, well, this is so corny. I was like, well, I got mocha skin. I'm about 125, 130 pounds. I was like, I got a short bob cut. I was like, I'm real cute. Like, I can just remember him saying that. And the reason I remember saying that is because because it was just such a corny thing to say. And I'm just thinking, I'm just, it. Well, he comes over maybe within a few days and we meet. And he's like, damn, you didn't lie. And I'm like, what do you mean? I know what he means. I'm like, what do you mean? It was like, your description, you look like you said. And I was like, yeah. And all I'm looking at, I'm like, damn, he's fine. That's what I'm thinking. He's fine. He's
Mm-hmm.
fine to me. He looks good to me. And so eventually we stay in communication. Eventually the relationship turned sexual or whatever. At some point, he would spend the night at my place, I would spend the night at his, just do different things for each other, attend each other's graduation, things of that nature. And during these years, even when me and my best friend at that time lived together, sometimes I would be in the shower before he got there. She would let him in and let him in my room and tell him that I'm in the shower. Sometimes, when I moved out on my own and we were no longer roommates, but still best friends, good friends, all that stuff, he would come over my house and then she would stop by and she would see him at my house. I can even remember at some point during the years, her asking me, I had a pregnancy scare one or two times with this guy, just because we weren't always being careful. And she would say, "Do you think he's cute enough for you to have a baby with?" Because she would think he was cute, according to her. I'm like, "Yeah, he looked fine to me," But I was like, "I'm not trying to have no baby by him or whatever." Well, eventually, at some point, I do end up getting pregnant. This is in my 20s. I end up
Okay.
getting pregnant by my then boyfriend at the time. Me and my boyfriend would break up. This guy, would I remember on the morning of my labor where I was to be induced, he took me to the hospital. He got up
Wow.
at 5 in the morning and took me to the hospital because I prearranged with him. Mind you, he had law school finals that day, but he still got up and took me. So that's what I mean by our relationship was never, I looked at him as more as a really good friend, but I knew that when I was in a relationship with someone, I couldn't be in communication with him because we crossed that line. So that would be disrespectful to be in communication with him while I was in a committed relationship with someone else. So sometimes we would talk and sometimes we would not. When I was not in a relationship, I would be with him in that way. Do you know what I mean?
Got you.
Having sexual relationship with him, spending time with him. And at some point we moved to different cities. He would drive like 2 hours to come see me at night, spend the night. Sometimes I would do it with him, and it was a friendship. I talked to him about certain things and he shared certain things with me. So I always looked at him as a friend, and I always made it clear with him that we don't talk to each other's friends. No matter what happens between us, you don't date any of my friends, I won't date any of your friends. You don't have sex with any of my friends, I won't have sex with any of your friends. That was just the thing. Now, she would come over to my house sometimes and see him there. Eventually, years went on. I moved out of state. We all started our lives or whatever, but we were all still in communication with each other here and there. I was even still in communication with him when I was out of state. I would just call him from time to time and just talk and just be like, okay, this, that, and the other. Nothing really heavy. And I can remember I hadn't talked to my friend and my girlfriend in maybe a year or so. We would see each other on Facebook and all that stuff. Now, let me give a quick little background of our friendship. I met her when I was approximately 17 years old.
Wow.
We lived in the same apartment complex. Her mother lived right next door, so she lived right next door to me. Her grandmother lived right around the corner. At that time, we were friends, really, really good friends, because we coordinated so I can go off to college, the same college as her, so we can be good friends. She spent time at my house. I spent time at her grandmother's house. We eat her grandmother's cooking, things of that nature. When she had her son, I would babysit her son sometimes.
So y'all were like family.
Yes, yes, yes. And her sister, and it was me, her, and her sister. We were best friends. We were like family. I knew all of her siblings. She knew my siblings, my family. It, when people, everybody knew we were friends. Everybody from home knew we were friends. Even people in college would see us together all the time. They would see me. They would ask, "Where is she?" Things of that nature. So now fast forward. So she calls me. I've moved out of state. I'm living, raising my child, doing my thing, working, all this. She's doing the same. And I think she's, I, I don't want to speak on her personal life, but whatever. So I, she calls me and we're just talking because we hadn't talked in a while, reminiscing about old stuff we did, new stuff that we have coming up, just laughing and kikiing as girlfriends do. And so she asked me a strange question, but I didn't think it strange at the time because remember, we hadn't talked in about a year, and I'm thinking we're just shooting the shit, just talking.
Right.
And so she asked me, she says, out of the guys that you've dated or that you've been with, whatever, talked to, who would you be mad if one of your friends talked to? I'm not thinking anything of this situation. And so I'm like, him. I named the guy. And she was like, for real? I was like, yeah. She was like, why? And I tell her, I said, because, just too much stuff has happened between us, he and I. And in some things I trust him and some things I don't. I said, and at certain points, it seemed like I wanted a relationship. And at other points, it seemed like he wanted a relationship. I said, we never asked each other that, but it's just the behavior. I was like, so yeah, I wouldn't, necessarily be with him in that way, but it will still bother me because I still have unresolved feelings for him.
Yeah.
So even though I knew that he and I would never go to that level, I, it's just, I couldn't see him with one of my friends and me be okay with it, considering
Right.
the history. And I don't believe people have ownership of other people, nothing like that. And I'll speak more about that in a minute.
Okay.
And so because she asked me the question, I asked her the question, because remember, we're girls, we're just shooting the shit. We ain't talked in about a year. So,
Right.
and so she answers the question and she tells me this guy, I know who the guy is. I won't say his name because he's famous in some circles.
Oh wow. Okay.
But, not like famous, but, in the field that,
He worked out
I will
you.
say that, yeah, he played basketball at our college and he went off to
Okay.
play basketball at some point. So, yeah. And
Got
so
you.
she says him. And I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, why? And no, she said she would. And she was like, but I would, if he wanted to get back together, I really would seek a relationship with him. I was like, okay, not thinking anything of the conversation because I'm like, we're just shooting the shit. So we go on and talk about other stuff. And then she informs me of some stuff that happened with the guy that I was, had been seeing all these years. And she shared some things that he recently been in an accident, all this stuff. I'm like, for
Wow.
real? I was like, I didn't know that. She was like, yeah, girl. I was like, okay. So I started reaching out to him and I pretended like I didn't know what happened with his accident and stuff to see was he going to tell me. He eventually did tell me. I asked him how he was and we started communicating more. A few months after that situation with our conversation with me and my friends, someone calls me. I'm not going to say who because I will not reveal my sources.
Understood.
However, they call me and they let me know that she and him had been seeing each other. It was insinuated that they had been having sex. And I'm like,
Oh
oh,
Lord.
okay. And so I get pissed. I'm like, the dirty bitch. Good. And the reason I called her a dirty bitch is because of the way that she played the situation.
Right.
Because you don't peg me like I'm a child or try to play those little silly ass games. We're grown people. If you felt like it was really a situation where there was a chance for you to have a serious and meaningful relationship with this person, but if you valued the friendship that you and I had over the years, then you come to me like a grown ass woman and say, hey, I know you and so used to talk or whatever, but I'm kind of feeling him and he's feeling me, and I want to pursue it to see where it can go. And I didn't want to try, and I didn't want to do anything behind your back. So I'm paraphrasing of what she should have said.
Right. Let me ask you this
Pissed.
real
I'm pissed.
quick
Yeah,
before we
yeah.
play. This the same one who told you he didn't even look
Yes,
like
yes,
it. Them be
yes,
the ones,
yes,
girl. I'm just saying.
yes,
Okay, keep
yes,
going. Them be
yes.
the ones,
And
child.
so I felt like our friendship now, that in hindsight, I should have known because of things that she has done to other people in the past. But I'm like, nah, we better than that. You know me, I know you. You're not gonna do that to me. I'm not gonna do that to you. And the reason I call her a dirty bitch is because of the way that she handled it and because of the conversation. You should have handled it better. But
Yeah.
I didn't call her. I didn't call her. I immediately called him, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, how you doing?" Basically, I'm checking on him or whatever. I said, "Let me ask you something." I said, have you and so been having sex? He was like, nah. I said, have y'all had sex? He was like, nah, who told you that? I said, uh-uh. Have y'all? He was like, no. I was like, so what's going on? He was like, we just went out to lunch one time, just as friends though. That's what he said. Just as friends. I said, oh, I said, because you remember that I told you that you could do whoever you want, date whoever you want, but please just don't go after anyone and sleep with any of my friends. He was like, yeah, I wouldn't do that. And I was like, I wouldn't do that to you. And he was like, yeah, I know. I was like, okay, good. And I was like, I'll talk to you later. Hung up because I knew he was fucking lying. I knew it was lying. I knew it was lying because I knew my information was good. I knew my information was solid.
Dang.
And because of the way he answered, because he asked me a question he answered my question with the question. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah, normally, yeah. When they do that, they're trying to divert the situation.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. So I don't talk to either of them for years, for a couple of years. Eventually, I moved back to my home state and I end up staying with her sister.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, that I love her sister, but we're not friends today. But that's between her and I. That's a personal issue between her
Got
and
you.
I that has nothing to do with that. But so she finds out that I'm there. And not that it was a secret, excuse me. Excuse me. Not that it was a secret or anything. However, so I call him when I get there because I'm like, I'm in town now. I need to see what's going on. I need to have a conversation and figure out why he would do what he did. And the reason I didn't reach out to her, because remember, I told you that in years previous, all of our friendship, that I seen how she did other people, all of her other friends in some kind of way.
Got you.
And I was like, no, because you did the dirtiest and low down thing to me. You were my friend. It wasn't just some random. You were my friend. You were my sister. And it hurt me to my heart for her to do that. It hurt me to my heart for him too. And so I reached out to him to see see if maybe she'd been up to her old ways and maybe was throwing herself at him. Not, and please let me say this. I don't excuse a guy for any behavior, but I knew my friend and
Understood.
I knew how she'd been with other people. Now, both of them were in the doghouse, but I wanted to get an explanation and I was hoping he would give me the honest explanation as to what happened. And so I reached out to him. And then I was like, we were supposed to meet up for lunch. And then I texted him, either I texted him or I called him. I called him. I was like, you know what? Never mind. I said, because I said, two people that I love very much betrayed me. And I don't feel like either of those people are very honest. I said, so I don't want to have lunch with you. I said, never mind, forget it. Hung up the phone. The very next day, about 7 o'clock in the morning, I get a text from her asking me, do you have something you want to say to me? Now, the day
Oh,
before, mind you, the day before, I had just experienced something, a family issue, and so my emotions were raw. When I tell you, I lost all my shit.
I bet.
I lost all my shit, and I text her back. I said, if I wanted to talk to you, I know how to get in touch with your dusty ass.
Oh,
She texted me again talking about, well, we were really in a relationship. We really wanted to have a relationship and this, that, and the other. And so I'm like, so I call her because I'm like, I'm not going to argue with you via text. Either you can come to your sister house and you can catch these damn hands,
oh.
or we can, or we can talk on this phone. So I call her. I mean, to be in that space, to be so angry that you're telling somebody to come to their sister house so you can beat their ass in front of their sister. Girl, they
Oh,
probably would have
snap.
jumped your ass over there.
Oh my God.
But that's how upset I was. And so I called her. She didn't answer. So I cussed her from here to Africa and back and
Damn.
around the world on the voicemail because she would not answer. She would not answer. And then I blocked her because I'm like, if you can't answer the phone, but you can do all these texts, but you can't answer the phone, there's no need for us to have a conversation. Haven't talked to her since. Haven't talked to either one of them
Wow.
since. I've only seen her once, and that one time that I saw her was at her sister's. Her sister had a little birthday gathering at a comedy club for her birthday, and her sister was like, "I want you to come, and I want her to come, but I don't want y'all into it." I was like, "I'm not gonna say nothing to her unless she say something to me." I was like, "That's done," because that had happened months ago. That the conversation
Right.
should have happened between her and I, but she was too scary to have it. So, because she knew she was wrong. But we didn't have any words or anything like that. But one of her friends that were with her was giving me a stank eye, and I don't really know why, but I wanted to ask, but I promised her sister that I would not say anything. And so I kept my word and didn't say anything because I didn't want to blow up the spot at the party. Because sometimes when your emotions get the best of you, you can get real loud and ignorant after
Oh, yes,
and you
I
don't mean
know.
to and you don't mean to because you let your emotions take over. And on that same day where I cussed her out, I called him and I left a message for him. I'm like, "You dirty low down mother, so that was my sister. Why would you do that with my sister?" Because I tell you, on when I found that out, I wanted to cry. It really hurt my heart because of both of their roles in my life. It hurt me more so for her to do it because I'm like, it's a guy. And I know some people don't look at it this way, but I think men are gonna do what men do when the opportunity presents itself. And why
Right.
did I have that expectation of him that I wouldn't necessarily have of some other man? I don't know, but I did. And it hurt me. And so I was more concerned about losing their friendships. Now, I probably could have dealt with it better if they had just talked to me about it. And the reason I also say that's because a guy that I used to date, like actually date, started liking her at some point, and he was reaching out to her on Facebook, and I'll say his name, Betrayal. I'm gonna be messy now because I'm mad
Oh, snap.
just thinking about it. But no, but just because I want him to know, because I haven't talked to him over the years because we lost contact because of that situation where he was reaching out to her to date her, and she used me as a shield to say no because it'll hurt me, hurt Skorpyen. And I was like, "No, girl, no, it won't. Y'all can date. Y'all can go ahead and date." But she didn't want to hurt his feelings. And so she had me reach out to him and tell him that it was wrong for him to try to date her. And, it was a mess. And
Yeah.
him and I eventually stopped talking. But I sacrificed that friendship with him for her.
Wow.
So, all those things, just happened. It was just really crazy. It's really ugly. And it was more so their betrayal because of the loss of friendship, not because they actually wanted to date. They're both attractive people. So attractive people are sometimes attracted to each other. So it happens.
Got you. Okay, so let me ask you this though. Thinking on it now, I know you jokingly was like, "I'm mad," but
Yeah.
on all like jokes aside, like, what do you think you learned from that situation? And looking back, how would you have handled it differently if you would have handled it differently?
I probably would have. I don't. I probably would with him specifically before the situation even got to that point. I should have stopped going that in and out with him because if you know that you have feelings with someone that you're never going to fully commit to, or there's never going to be a fully committed situation or with you guys, what's the point? You're just putting yourself in a position to get hurt. Now, I did
Right.
have the expectation for him to get married one day and go off, and then he and I would never talk again. I did have that expectation. I knew that would happen one day. I just didn't expect it with my friends. So my heart was preparing myself for when he or I eventually get married and we can't talk to each other anymore. That's what I was prepared for. But it wasn't fair to put that restriction on him either because we were not together. And I really didn't have that. Like I said, if they had have come to me like adults and talked to me about it, it would have been a different outcome. I'm pretty sure. Because you
Yeah, I
can't
think
tell
just
grown folks not what to and not to do, but you
right.
respect the fact that grown folks come to you. Would the friendships have been the same? Probably not, because I would have been looking at her with the side eye like all the time. You were talking about he wasn't attractive. You were really looking at him, and I
Mm-hmm.
would have been looking at him like, oh, you was really digging my homegirl all this time, but you were sexing me. You know what I mean? So I would
Mm-hmm.
have been looking at it in that way. So if the friendships probably never would have been the same, but we would have had something. I wouldn't just totally lost my friends. Do you know what I mean?
I know
So
exactly
I
what you
would have
mean.
handled that differently. Would I have still cussed them both out if I hadn't, ended the thing with him? Yeah. And I should have ended the friendship with her long before that, because when you see how people treat other people, don't think that you're the exception. I have learned that is one thing that I have learned to be true. Look at how people treat other people, the other people around them. If they fall out with all their female friends, all of them, all, and I'm not exaggerating,
Yeah.
all of them, then trust and believe that you're not the exception. Watch how people treat other people, and that will tell you how they will eventually treat you.
I definitely agree with that. Tenfold.
Yeah.
I do. Like I had to learn that the hard way with a couple of my past relationships with guys that I dealt with. Um, just how they treated people outside of even romantically, they even treated me the same. So you have to look at a person's integrity and all of that because they carry that energy in every type of relationship that they
Mm-hmm.
have with people. So I definitely agree. Let me ask you this. I want to go back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think you and him never like spoke on like being together? Was it just that energy that just came out that nah, this is fun, but this isn't it? Or did you guys have conversations about it and it just never was the right time for you or for him? Like, what do you think that was?
It was because, for me, for sure, it was a trust issue. What I found out briefly, maybe a month into us, you know, talking or what have you, um, that he was in a relationship with someone else on campus. And at that point, he and I had already had kids.
Started.
And
Right. Oh,
so
wow.
my emotions were involved at some point. So he and I would constantly just stop talking to him, just like, because I knew that I felt convicted that I was wrong, because that's never how I conducted myself.
Got you.
And because I was a big believer in karma and still am, that what you put out into the world, that you will get back. And the way that it circles back will not always be the same way that you put it out.
Agree.
So it was that trust issue there. So that's why I could never see myself committing there. And it was just like, no. For him, I can't say what it was because we never had that conversation. I probably, when I look back on it now, there was self-esteem issues with myself. I know that. Before, for me to have two such people in my life like that would do such type of things, especially with the friendship, there were issues with my self-confidence in relation to him, in the sense that I would think that I wasn't strong enough to say, or disciplined enough to say, just leave this guy alone. Just leave him alone. You don't have to accept that. And it wasn't, and he didn't force anything on me. It wasn't like he was forcing, wasn't like he was coming to me and saying, oh, we're gonna be together. None of that, because I didn't have the expectation any longer that he and I would be together in that way. But there's something there that allowed me to continue to go back to that situation when I felt lonely or I wasn't with someone. And I think it was that familiarity, because it's like, what it is and you know that it's wrong, but there's familiarity and comfort with that person. So you allow yourself to go back to the same situation.
Right.
And so that's what that was with him. And so I'm not, um, in the clear here with that situation, because I should have let both people go a long time ago. So I believe that was some kind of energy making sure that I could let both people go because I needed to.
Got you.
You know what I mean?
Oh, exactly
Because
what you mean.
yeah, so I needed to let both of them go, and I was culpable in hanging on to something that I am on both people with both people, something that I should let go of a long time ago. So yeah.
Got you. Okay. So, do you think I was gonna see if you could give, because I know also now, you've kind of been, you say you've been celibate for 5 years, you've been
Yeah.
focusing on yourself.
Hmm.
How does one break the chains of familiarity? Like just dealing with somebody because they're comfortable. What would be a tip you would give?
For me in that situation, I did after that situation, I experienced that with them. I did eventually date other people, someone else, one
Okay.
person in particular. I shouldn't say other people, one person in particular. Um, but what helped me get over the situation with that is that I knew, it's like I knew, I felt it in my spirit that that I no longer needed them. They no longer served a purpose. And that's not to say you use people. That's not what I mean. When I say they no longer served a purpose, they no longer made me feel good.
Right.
You should feel good when you're around certain people, and you should make other people feel good when you're around them. Your energy should not be drained. You should not feel guilty about being around certain people. You shouldn't feel like you have to be on guard when you're around certain people. If you feel those things, that means you should not be around those people, because that is not a good energy. A guilt energy and an unsafe energy, those are not um, productive energies or
At all.
welcoming energies or energies that help with growth. So what helped me was knowing that I shouldn't. I just shouldn't. Now, as far as my celibacy goes, beyond that, I just feel good. It started feeling good to be able to sit back and reflect on things, because sometimes when you're going and always getting in another situation, you don't have time to do the reflective work
You
and to
don't.
be honest with yourself. And that's what it takes, being brutally honest with yourself. And sometimes I had to be like, you were being dumb as crap. You were being dumb as shit. That was some dumb shit to do. Why the F would you do that? Why do you act like you had no common sense when you did that? I would tell myself the truth. And sometimes the truth was harsh when I reflected on certain situations. But I would say, what is the lesson in that?
Yeah.
Then I would hug myself emotionally and do the self talk. Well, you learn that if they turn their phone face down all the time, then they probably don't want you to see the number that's coming across.
Right.
Well, if they go missing for 2 days and then all of a sudden they pop back up and want to spend time with you, that they were probably with somebody else. Well, don't nobody phone break that doggone much. You know that, right? You know what I'm saying? Well,
Right.
don't nobody go to their baby's mom's house and spend the night on the couch. That's some bullshit, girl. Quit believing that stuff.
That's a big fact.
So stuff like that, I would not beat myself, but I would tell myself the truth that I refused to accept at the time before prior. And then I would tell myself the lesson and be like, remember the lesson. And then I also had to ask myself, why was I so willing to accept the lies that people told me as truth? I never wanted, and I still, to this day, even though I'm not in a relationship, I will start dating at some point. I don't know when. I don't want, and I've always said that, I don't want to have to be an investigator. I don't.
Right.
I don't. And so I'm now working on the energy, working on being receptive to analyzing and acknowledging people's energy. And if it don't feel good, if it feels uncertain, it ain't right. That's with friendships, familiar relationships, and so on. If the energy don't feel right, acknowledge that energy, analyze the energy, and if it's right, you accept and proceed. If it's not, then you move on, move away. And that's what I've had to do. That has worked for me, to be able to have that time to work on self and to acknowledge the stuff that I was culpable in and the stuff that I choose to accept and the energy that I was welcoming into my space. I had to do it. And I
Yeah.
think some people don't want to do that. And it's hard to do, but, and it sounds so cliche to say those things because people have been using those terms so loosely and they're really not doing the work.
That's the thing, and people
Not,
don't do the work. It's hard, like because like what we just were talking about. It's easy to just go and get into another relationship, get
mm-hmm,
into another situation, but people they don't. They're saying I'm about to say it's cliche too, but when you do that, you end up meeting the same issue but in a different body, and
yes,
you have to do the inner work like what you're talking about. So when you feel that familiar energy, you automatically like, okay, I know
yes,
this feeling is familiar
mm-hmm,
and it's not a good familiar feeling. Let me get
yes.
out of this situation before I get too invested. At least for me, because I know
Mm-hmm.
if I get too invested, it's a wrap. Like so I
That's what
know
most people though. You're
yeah,
not. It's not, and I think sometimes people sometimes beat themselves up because they believe that they're the only ones doing these things and they're the only ones that have experienced these things and they're the only ones that have allowed themselves to experience those things. No, we all fall short. We all do those things. We have all been the dummy for somebody. And some of us have been the dummy more times than we would like to admit.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
And
I
it's
know what
like,
you mean.
and to be honest, most of us do not have it together at all. Some of us have it a little bit together, and some of us have it more together, but nobody has it all together.
Right.
And no one has all the answers, especially when it comes to matters of the heart. Mm-mm. Because the heart wants what it wants. And sometimes you let the heart have it. And sometimes you have to be like, heart, shut the F up. We
That's
moving on. And you're going to heal eventually. It don't feel good right now, but you will heal.
right.
And
That's
that's it, knowing that it will heal. That's the part that and I talked about this on my podcast, is that mending a broken heart is possible. Going through a heartbreak actually feels like a physical pain. It is really physically painful. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. However, mending a broken heart is possible. It really is. It's possible. But you can't put yourself into the same situations over and over again.
that's a
Meaning that
fact.
if y'all are broken up, you can't be having booty calls with him. You can't. You just can't, because the emotional attachment is there. You can lie in the bed for a couple of days and wallow and cry and all that. But then you gotta push yourself through. Get up and take a shower. Go take a walk, hang out with your friends, watch a movie. Not the movies that's gonna make you cry, but the movies that are gonna make you laugh. Make yourself feel good. Put on your makeup, get dressed, do your hair, do things that make you feel good. And you have to self talk sometimes. Sometimes you just got to talk yourself through the situation, especially if it's a lonely night and you ain't got nothing to do and it's raining out there and the rain sounded so good and all you want to do is cuddle up.
Yeah.
Talk yourself through. Talk yourself through. It's work to get to a place where you need to be. Nothing ever comes easy, and it gets easier over time. It's like learning something new. When you first start it, it takes you all day to finish the task. But after a while, you get into a groove and then you're able to knock it out like that. That's the same thing with healing and moving on. You know, you have to try.
Got you. Thank you for going into that and just giving the audience just different things that they could do while just trying to heal from a heartbreak, or just also touching on to the fact of jumping into different relationships over and over and over again without really sitting with yourself, at least for a while, and asking like, why am I going through these cycles? What is it about me? Because I know for the longest, for me, it was always the other person until my last relationship. And it really forced me to look at myself like, no, girl, you are not always the good girl in the situation all the time. So, and me taking a break has helped me discover a lot of different things just on my own journey. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. Now you have your own podcast. Could you tell the audience about your podcast?
I do. I have a podcast called If It Isn't Love Podcast. Make sure you're searching If It Isn't Love Podcast. You have to put the podcast on the end or it won't come up. My podcast won't come up. But it's a podcast that I like to describe it as where love and relationship lessons meet storytelling and music. Basically, it's a place where the love and relationship lessons that I share are a reflection and review of the music that you will hear. I share like the story that I shared here today, that I have experienced over my life of dating. I give relationship advice. I answer questions. I give scenarios. Um, I share a little music. And the reason I started that podcast is because I didn't hear people being honest about being played, or being honest about still missing that boyfriend that played them, or that girlfriend that played them, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Or being okay with if your boyfriend has another girlfriend. I'll say this. During my time of being single, I have had to think about what kind of things would I accept and would be okay with me, and what kind of things have I accepted prior to that were not okay with me.
Gotcha.
I have been cheated on and found out that I was cheated on, and I wasn't mad about the cheating. I wasn't.
Oh.
I wasn't mad that they had somebody else. I wasn't mad about the sex. Let me say that. I wasn't mad about the sex. I was mad about the lies. That's what I was mad about.
Gotcha.
I don't look at people in sex in the same way that men having sex with other women the same way, or women having sex with men. I don't. I even thought about, am I okay? Would I be okay if I were with a guy and he were to have another girlfriend, as long as we knew about each other? Would I be okay with that?
Right, like a poly dynamic that's consensual. Yes. Right.
Yes. And I don't know. I think that I could. The reason I say that is if that man is capable of being open and honest with both people. I don't know. I've never experienced it. So I couldn't say. Sometimes you ever hear people say, well, if I were you, I would do this. I don't know.
Right, because you've never been in that predicament.
I've never been in it. I just knew what I experienced before and what made me upset about the situations before.
Got you.
Because I believe, I know these studies say most men don't cheat, that women cheat as much as men. I know what the studies say, but right. The studies are skewed in some cases.
They're very skewed, and I agree with you. And I know I've thought about that on my own journey, because I'm big on honesty and integrity over everything. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you can be honest, I think poly dynamics, I see why they're successful if it's being ethically done. You know, like I follow poly groups and stuff like that. So I am interested in the lifestyle. I don't know per se for myself, but I do see the healthiness in it if it's done ethically. Because sometimes it's not about having sex with the other person unless you're somebody, in my opinion, you're somebody who's overly possessive. But then again, I can understand people who just strictly believe in monogamy because they're not the type of person who can love 2 to 3 people at the same time, and they don't see a reason for it. So I respect both.
Yeah, and when I say poly, I shouldn't say poly for me in the sense that I mean open. I don't, when I'm not into me having multiple partners like that. That's not what I mean when I say poly.
Okay.
And so that situation, I'm not interested in that. That's too much for me. And I think what happens when those situations work is where a man knows his limits. I recently had a guest on an episode that will probably be out before your episode comes out of If It Isn't Love, where I talk with a fellow podcaster. And I asked him, is he more of a monogamy guy or more of a polygyny guy? Polygyny is where a man has more than one spouse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, he was very honest. He said, I think I'm more into monogamy. He said, I don't think that I could handle 2 women. And that was so honest. And I like
and
that.
refreshing.
Yes.
Because a lot of men can't handle it, and they'll still say that they're more on the poly side, whether it's having several wives or girlfriends, and they can't really handle. So my personal story within the polyamorous lifestyle, I ran into this couple. So I'm a recruiter for a living, and I used to recruit for this company. I'm not going to say the company's name, but I met a guy there, and we hit it off like we were cool, and as we were getting close, his girlfriend, wife, they had 2 kids. He would go home and he would talk about me to her, being open with her and stuff like that. And she had my work number because as the recruiter for this company, I handled everything. I helped with payroll, benefits, HR. So she had my phone number as well because she helped him with different things when he was getting hired on. And she reached out to me, almost kind of inviting me in. But what I discovered going into the dynamic, it was, she would say she was open to the idea, and maybe she was, but I felt like if I'm going to be in the situation, then he would need to be able to spend time with me separately. And he never could find time to do that. And it'd be, well, why don't you just come over? Sometimes I didn't want to come over there. Sometimes I didn't want to be, you know what I'm saying? And it just ended up being it didn't end very well. It didn't end very well. And I felt like at the end of the day, because we were friends, I felt like I lost a friend trying it. And so I know for me, that's why I'm kind of like, I don't know. And I know for him, it was more of a connection of, I think, just being able to talk stuff out. Because sometimes in polydynamics, people just like to have friends. Because that's kind of how it started with us. But then I think, she kind of tried to open the door to see. But in her mind, their relationship was supposed to be like a V. I don't know if you're familiar with the V dynamic, 2 women and 1 man. And I'm like, that's not me. Like, so it didn't work out. So my experience was like, yeah.
I think sometimes in those instances, what I have, I'm very interested. I'm just, what is the word? Intrigued by polydynamics and how different people make them work. And what I have seen over the time of paying attention and with conversations with people, I actually had some co-wives on my Smart Mouth Scorpio podcast.
Wow.
Probably in 2018, they were on there. They were very honest with each other. It was actually the first wife's idea to seek out a second wife, which is very rare. Wow. But back to my original thought, that some people aren't honest about what they are willing to accept and what they are and aren't able to handle. And that goes for both the women and the men.
I think
Because
so
I
too.
think sometimes if you recent podcast, um there was a recent clip of a podcast. I won't say the name because neither you or I are affiliated, I don't think. So
Okay.
I won't. But they had a clip of it's a man and a wife, and the man said he felt like he was forced into monogamy with his wife because he didn't.
Wow.
And I understood that. I understood what he was trying to say. I believe. I think some men feel like this. In order not to leave the person, not to lose the person that they want, they agree to something that they're not comfortable with.
So,
But then in the end, you end up having a breakdown because then you're unfulfilled and happy because you accepted less than what you want. Now,
right.
it's not for either the man or the woman to accept something that they don't want. If she's not comfortable with something outside of monogamy, then she needs to move on. If he's not comfortable with just monogamy, then he needs to move on. But accepting something that you're not comfortable or fulfilled with only leads to unhappiness in the end.
That's a fact. I'm wondering if he ever expressed to her before they joined hands in marriage that he was polyamorous. Did they say that on the podcast?
No, I just saw the
So,
clip. I just saw the clip they
gotcha.
had.
Because I know some people will push that down, or they'll discover later on, like because as we grow and we evolve, they'll kind of discover that okay, maybe this isn't for me. And I think people. Let me ask you this, since we're kind of on the topic of this: when you're in a relationship with somebody for a while, and then the maybe outgrow an idea of what maybe the other person thinks a relationship should be. Where do you stand? Like, I know communicating and all of that stuff. Do you believe like that person should stay in it because they've been together for a while, or um, you
If they've
know,
outgrown the relationship?
or maybe outgrown the style of the relationship, or or even outgrown the relationship, like, and maybe communication isn't working. I mean, for I guess maybe loyalty to that person, or because of the history, do you stay in that relationship, you think, or do you eventually part ways for your own happiness?
It depends on the conversation that you all have had. If you can be, because sometimes I think relationship dynamics can be amended, meaning
Okay.
what you agreed to in the beginning no longer serves you. And so having that conversation and being open and honest about that conversation can put you in a position to get what you need to be fulfilled, because you never know if you don't talk about it. You may think, okay, well, we said it was just he and I for the rest of our lives, no one else. And then at some point, you're realizing that does not work, but you haven't, and you just assume that he still feels the same, that it's just going to be you and him. And maybe his outlook on it has changed. Maybe he needs something more or something different, but you haven't communicated about it. So how will you know? You're working on an assumption, and people's views and needs and wants change over time because they're growing. Because you grow, you're never the same. You're not going to be with the same person. That person is not going to be the same person you met 5 years ago. If they are, something's wrong. That means that
Gotcha.
person's growth is stunted in some kind of way, and something else needs to happen there. But having that, that level of communication, of being honest, I think some people don't talk about it because other people get offended when their partner is honest.
They do.
Why?
They do. And that's why I was
Isn't that
just
called?
wondering. That's crazy. That's what I'm wondering too though. But some people will get honest, or their partners will get honest, and that the other person just doesn't understand, or they don't, or they haven't, like, I won't say evolved, because in some people's opinion, because somebody wants to do something different, it doesn't mean they evolve. They just want to do something different. So I'll
Mm-hmm.
respect everybody's opinion. But would you agree that it's okay for that person to walk away to fulfill what they feel they are missing, or do they stick around anyway?
Mm-mm. Sometimes people get into situations and think they want something that they really don't want. So to your point, that they really haven't evolved, they just decide that they don't want it. You ever bought something and then you get it home, you be like, what the hell was I thinking? I really don't want this. It's, not that people are things to be bought, but you know what I mean? But your opinion changes. It's really not what you thought it was. It really wasn't what all the hype was. And so you change your mind. And no, you don't say, if you don't want me anymore, if I'm in a situation where you don't want what we have anymore and it no longer serves you, I'd rather you leave than to make me unhappy, than us to be in an unhappy situation. Or for me to feel like you can't stand me. And it's not really that you can't stand me. It's that you resent me in some way, or you resent the situation in some way.
Right.
Because you've committed to something that no longer serves you, or wasn't what you thought it was cracked up to be. And I think, I had a couple on recently, and they have been married 11 years. And they talked about how you have to be honest. You have to talk all the time about what you're thinking and what you're feeling, because if you don't, then things can get out of whack and you're no longer on the same page. It doesn't mean you're going to agree on everything, but I'll go back to what I said. For me, no, I don't want somebody with me that don't want to be with me. That's just what it is. I'd rather you be happy. Who am I? I don't own you. You don't own me. And so for me to say, no, you have to stay, even though you are no longer happy with the situation, that's not fair. We are people that all have a right and a desire to be happy. So who am I to tell you that you can't be happy? Gotcha. And I wouldn't be happy knowing that I'm keeping you from your happiness.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Now, where can the audience find you, Miss Skorpyen November?
Well, you can find me personally on Instagram at Skorpyen November. You can find If It Isn't Love podcast on all major podcast listening platforms. And I'm on Facebook, Skorpyen November as well. Now, my name is spelled Skorpyen, Skorpyen November. So, yeah, you can find me there at those places. And yeah, or you can find me at skorpyennovember.com.
Awesome. All of those links will be in the show notes. I want to thank you so much for coming on. You guys can find me at P4K Podcast on Facebook or on Instagram. And until next time.
Thank you for tuning in to today's show. If you liked this podcast, please download and subscribe. If there's anything you would like to talk about in regards to relationships, or would like to be a guest on the show to speak on relationships or get advice, you can always connect via social media at Playing for Keeps, or email DJ at info@p4kdating.com. Thank you for tuning in, and bye for now.